coffee and tidbits with a morning quip. News notes, giggles, cut like a knife. We're toasting all the good things in life.
We are really going to have a fun day today. Robert Mills is sitting out there in beautiful California. How are you doing, Robert?
I'm doing fabulous, Randy. I've always loved being with you for these shows. It's great.
Well, this is just going to be, we've had a lot of people ask us, what is this, all the good things in life? What is your company about? Why is it Golfers Golf and Travel? And we had some things happen over the past couple of weeks that are pretty important that have taken years to get. One of which is getting our credentials for sports and meaningful in our world, since it's Golfers Golf and Travel, getting our professional PGA Tour media credentials, opportunities to go and cover the story up close and personal in the upcoming golf season and when we work out that travel schedule. And that just takes a long time to get the credibility to do it. And all the good credit goes to Art Strickland, who is down in Texas, who I wanted to be with us today, but he's getting ready. He's flying today to the Ryder Cup, and we're going to have a Ryder Cup preview show on Thursday with Art. But Art is, and this is the part of the show, Robert, that we're giving our resumes. We are lifting our skirt and showing our frilly white lace slips.
It took a long time. It's all long to get my, I'm not, people say he's from California. I'm not from California. I went to 10 grade schools and elementary schools and high schools before I graduated from high school. I had the 10 different schools. My father was an engineer and he took me all over the place. I was in this little tobacco town of Smithfield, and then I went to Myrtle Beach, which was a whole different culture down there. And then I went up to Blacksburg, which is this university town. And then I went out to this little scar on the plain where I met you called Freeport. And it was, all these different places really, it was hard on friendships, and disruptive on stability, but it was extremely broadening. It really conveys it's this big world out there and it's very different. And I think it helped me as a big net positive.
Well, both Robert and I grew up in Freeport. What year did you move to Freeport, Robert?
I moved to Freeport my junior year, which was 66, and then turned right around and graduated in 67 and marched off to the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana. It started in physics. I got the science award, remember, and discovered I wasn't good at it. And so I cast about and finally I hitchhiked out to Berkeley, and so I want to seek my fortune here. And then I transferred from the University of Illinois in physics to the University of California, Berkeley in philosophy, got a degree in philosophy. And my advisor brought me in, at the end. He said, "Robert, what you going to do next year? I'm going to get a PhD." And he says, "Have you looked at the numbers?" And I said, what are you talking about? He says, "There's 3,500 people with PhDs in graduating in philosophy and 300 jobs. Do you like driving a cab in Manhattan? That's what you're going to do." I thought, he said, "Have you ever considered law school?"
There you go.
Bing! So
tell me about law school. Is that hard as they say it is, or what is the difficulty of law school?
It's not hard at all. I didn't find it hard, and I don't think most people found it hard. They try to make it difficult sometimes. The bar wants to limit access to people getting to be lawyers because there's too many of them, and so to protect their interests, they raise the bar. And the way they do that in most states is make it very difficult to pass the bar exam. And they did that to extremes in California. The majority of people who took the bar exam didn't pass it, and these are people who graduated from big schools and went 3 years to law school and took all these courses and still flunked the state bar. So that was just designed to limit the number of people who could become lawyers.
So what's a typical question on the bar? Do they give a case and you have to take a look? Do you have to know the law?
It consists of two parts, and one is the multiple choice. You've seen those exams. They ask you, is it this, or this, and then the other part is just freelance essays. They say to you, they give you a little paragraph of things that happened. Charlie was, walking on the street and he was run over and this, that, and then, talk about his legal rights. And so you have to sit there and write a free form essay about that, talking about all the issues, the legal issues that were implicated in that little set of facts, and what you would do if you represented him. And so that's the state bar, and they it was graded very harshly. Um, and so but I made it first time, and went out, and at that point San Francisco was besieged. People from Harvard, Yale, Princeton were pouring in. They wanted jobs there, wanted to come out there and live. So it was very, very difficult for me to get a job in San Francisco in law. So I said, to hell with that. I'll open my own shop. So
Really?
these two older guys said, come on, Robert, let's open our own law firm. And we did. We opened up our own law firm, Horsted, Beats, and Mills. Okay. And I was the little junior partner. And we went down and rented this brick, a gorgeous little glass thing, very inexpensive in those days, in some abandoned gold rush building, and I put my shingle out. And I only had two rules. They had to write a check. The clients had to write a check to clear the bank, and had to be legal. And that pretty much eliminated all of it. People
That's
would
good.
come in and they would say, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. I said, I'm really sorry, you don't have a case. I said, I know, but we can say that this happened and this happened and this happened. And I have a friend who will testify. I said, wait, you mean fraud? You make this all up? Get out of it. My partner was this wonderful guy. He was this from South Dakota, and he would scream at them in his office. I'd hear him, and he called them we can says, as in we can say, and he'd throw them out of his office. And then the other, so I joined all these bar association committees. You had these, panels you could serve on. And there was the one you get full fee, which was so full, but you never get any business out of that. And there was one was called a low fee panel. And you could join that, and they would send you clients, and you had to do, like, for example, a bankruptcy, soup to nuts for $200, which is not even minimum wage.
Right.
And then, or you could do a divorce, or you would do an eviction or whatever. And so I got on that. And there's a no fee panel. You took the whole thing for nothing. Why would you do that? So you do it for experience. I mean, I would I get to put my little one suit on and go into court. Your Honor, Robert Mills representing the plaintiff here, and and I'd stand there with a real lawyer, and on the other side, and it was just really thrilling to be in the game and playing it for real, and it really got me up to speed in a hurry, and I was able to thrive from that. It was a lot of hard work. And back in those days, there was no computer research. So the client would come in, and you go to the law library. Everybody bragged about their libraries, the schools, the law firms. You had this big library. You go in there and pull things off and read. You had to figure out what the law was. Now you just type in there, I want every case from 1840 to 1870 that covers it. And boom, there they are, and that mentions this name. And so that's why there used to be a whole lot of paralegals and a whole lot of people in these law firms that did research. And my son's in AI, and he says that the real impact of AI is it's going to make a host of professions like the law, but in this case, coding and a bunch of other things, vastly more efficient. That one person can do the work of 10 people 5, 10 years ago. Because it tells them, it helps them, and that's going to cause people to be laid off, and so he thinks it's the net. Up until this point in the history of the world, every technological innovation has created more jobs than it replaced. This might be the exception, we'll see,
Well, it's funny. I use AI every day. I was telling you before we came on air about some research I was doing this past week, and there is using Chat GPT. If you're paying for it, there is a thing called deep dive. And, people are put in what I call the query, whatever you want AI to do. Well, before my genius son said, well, try deep dive, and when you have a real sticky problem. And it takes it a little bit, but it brings up what a deep dive would do. I mean, I can imagine for an attorney, good Lord,
it's instantaneous.
yeah, it is.
Thousands and thousands of cases all over the world. Find the one that mentions what in the time frame, and and put it all and lay it right in front of you. I mean, it was mind-boggling because I would spend my weekends, down there in some law library, instead of dating girls, I was down there. And so it was extremely shocking to me just how powerful it is. And
Well, just even for this, our time today, there were some things that because we have the distillery channel, uh, this particular format is actually just meeting and greeting and telling people about what our essence of who we are a little bit and what we're going to do. But we have two major companies, two major websites, Live Eco Style and the Distillery Channel. And basically, to define it, we're a media company. We've become so big that people say, well, what do you do? Well, we're a storyteller. We don't do anything political. We have our opinions, but we're not going to go in there and blow people up. We want this to be a place where people can come and be entertained, be like reading a book and having a cup of coffee and enjoying the weekend, just listening to good stories. What's going on in the world. I mean, the Ryder Cup next week, that's going to be insanity. I'm looking forward to, golf has been a passion of mine for 70 years, and they now give us these virtual offices where Art Strickland, our credentialed Pulitzer nominated author, is going to be on site out at Bethpage Black, fighting the crowds, going home, getting there and all. He loves it. He's a great guy, well respected. I have a terminal where I can sit and tune in all the live interviews, the afters, the befores, live updates, pictures coming from the Ryder Cup. The only thing I can't do is show live updates during the live broadcast. It has to be over. Once it's over, then I can use the material that they send us. But I can literally ask questions of Scotty Scheffler if I have a good question during his moment in front of the microphone. And they send us out the schedules and all that. So that the USGA, the PGA, and now in NASCAR, the other area that we're covering, we have media credentials there. So from F1 to a 2-foot putt on a green, it goes from the fastest to the slowest things in life that we do. But Robert, you've been such a great part. There's so many parts of your life, from mountain climbing to visiting 63 countries, having a wife that does detailed planning. Going back to Europe when you went to Portugal last week's show, I'm still putting it together. Was such a deep dive. I learned so much about Portugal. I had no idea. I mean, you become a real historian and storyteller during that. I mean, it was just great. And I would imagine
the history of these places. What happened here? What happened before that? Where do these people come from? I mean, what was it like before? And it's places like Portugal, they just have this incredible history that we don't much have here. I mean, not that our culture isn't a great culture, but it doesn't go back this deep. They're surrounded by deep history. I mean, most of the buildings that you see there were built before the United States ever existed. And there's just stuff from the Roman times and all, and it was a thrilling place to go and visit. And so I think people should tune into that. They will really like it. And over the next couple of weeks, Randy, I'm going to be out. See that mountain behind? I'm going to be out climbing a couple of these mountains.
Yeah.
I'm going to be climbing Agassiz, which is just a little bit south of this one you're looking at there. This is Mount Tyndall, and it's named after the guy who discovered climate change. He was an Irish, because I'm Irish. He was an Irish physicist, and he was fascinated by heat exchanges. So he put carbon dioxide in some glass bottles and put them out in the sun for a little bit next to regular air, and he noticed that they got really hot and kept the heat. And so he said, this is strange, these greenhouse gases. Then he looked at a magazine, he saw a picture of a volcano, 2 and 2. People have known about glaciers coming and going for centuries, since the Middle Ages. And so he put 2 and 2 together, went to the volcanoes and discovered that carbon dioxide comes out, huge, and raises the mountain, warms the air, glaciers retreat, plants and trees take it out, sequestered under the ground, glaciers advance, and there is climate change that a third grader can understand. This is the guy behind me, the mountain there that I've climbed. Uh, and he was the guy that did it. And now south of that, about not that far, 30, 40 miles, is Mount Agassiz. It's named for this Swiss-born Harvard professor who discovered glaciers. He was that came up with, a lot of people said, oh no, that's Noah's flood or something. He came up with the whole concept of glaciers, and then in November I'm going to do Agassiz in October, in about 3 weeks from now, and then I'm going to go and do Mount Whitney, the highest in the continental U.S., in early November. It's going to be I've done it 3 times in November, so it's going to hopefully be my fourth ascent in November when it's quite cold. But it should be a lot of fun, and I hope I can. I wonder if I can, because there's reception on the summit, not, but you step off around the 2 steps, that is not.
Right.
But right on the summit, you look down into the Owens Valley. So maybe I could do part of the podcast, talking to you about being in November they close all the stuff north in Alaska and all. So I'll be the highest man on the ground in the United States, and
There you go. Well, speaking of that, when you go now, we talked about you do coffee. We talked about it. You have the special concoction, and so I did a query into Chat GPT. I said, "What's the healthiest drink to drink between the coffee, wine, and spirits?" And I'll get to the answer in a minute. And then I said, what was really interesting is that the other question I asked is that can people really tell the difference between a $150 bottle of wine and a $20 bottle of wine? And and you're right, they can't. It's out here. We're going right to the bottom line because you're shaking your head. Is that what really happens? So there are great places to buy wine. Aldi food, which has some great wines in there. Hard to believe, but if you can get an app on your phone to read the label, and it'll tell you, if you're into ratings and all those things, it's all got to be above 90, whatever, in the New York, blah blah blah. And but the funny part is that the brain gets fooled. It tricks itself. Is why a $150 bottle of wine tastes better to a consumer. It literally and this comes from a study, and I'll put it up in our blog so people can go read it. And your brain tells you that wine is pricey. That makes it better. You're flipping the switch. There is actual flip. The
confirmation bias, right? Is that what they call it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Your pleasure centers light up more, and it's all very, very detectable. I mean, it's all
the hot thing now, is wine is going down. The young people now are not buying so much wine is but one of the things that's replacing, at least to some degree, is olives. People don't realize that olives have varietals, just like wine. There's dozens of different types of olives, and they all taste different. The Europeans mock us, especially in places like Portugal and in Spain,
right.
Which is the biggest olive. Americans think the olives are these green things, and that's why half the olive oil in the United States is fake. It's linseed oil dyed green.
Really?
I tell the difference. Boy, you couldn't do that in Europe. I mean, and so olive oil is a bit, and it's coming to California. It's a thing now. You go up into the wine country and you can do olive oil tasting, and then you get this one and that one and that one, and they're all really quite different. But remember, the thing about olive oil is the exact opposite of wine, that as soon as it's harvested, it starts to deteriorate. In wine, it's the other way around. The older the bottle, the better. With olive oil, the older the bottle, the worse. Okay, drink it right away, have it right away. But olive oil is a big thing now, and it's going to be a lot bigger thing, and it's healthy for you, unlike too much alcohol. But
well, I'll tell you what, the other evidence, it's really funny. It's 10 points that it says on the sheet, 10 evidence-based health facts of why coffee is better for you than alcohol. I mean,
coffee is an essential vitamin, Randy. I mean, you can't, and I take the concoction. I told you it's Cho chocolate. Right. It's a artisan Berkeley made chocolate with some licorice in it, and then I have Ecuadorian freeze dried coffee, and then I have malt, the old carnation stuff you used to have as kids, you know, and I put the three of them together in a mug and pour boiling water off my stove up in the high on the mountain and drink it. And if you have, as I've told you this before, you know, if you have 2 glasses of it, you can fly up to the summit. You don't have to even climb, you know.
Well, have you ever had Cuban coffee?
What's that?
Cuban coffee in little cups?
I have never had Cuban coffee.
Well, let me tell you the story then. I love coffee. I mean, it just coffee's in, just my family. I could tell you stories all day about coffee, but we were down in down in the Keys, and as you go down Route 1 and you run out of Route 1 going down to Key West, you can hang a right and go to the resorts, hang a left, and you go where it's a little rougher neighborhood, but they've got great food and good people, and it's where the guys get off the ships and they go and drink and have some fun in the arenas there. They also have, which is very interesting. I did a documentary on it. I didn't get the rights to release it, but they have basically an outdoor museum of man-made rafts that have found their way to the shoreline of South Florida. And these were made by Cubans trying to escape. And you would not believe, I mean, the motivation that these people had to escape. You would not think you could go 95 miles.
That's a long ways in the ocean, you know. I mean, and just think what they had to do. You know, around the world, you know, people don't leave their homes and their countries, you know, for light reasons, you know.
Right.
The reason they're coming here is because they're being driven here by life and death type, you know. I mean, they're desperate.
Right.
And, you know, I think, well, we should treat them better. And
Oh, you wouldn't believe. I mean, when I go back, I'm going to go do it again because it truly was humbling. But I learned how to drink Cuban coffee. It's very
Cuban coffee.
Cuban coffee, little cup, and very, very thick, very rich, very and just everything about it is off charts. But they tell you if you're going to drink that, you have to start with four, count them, packets of sugar.
Sugar.
Sugar in these little cups, and then you put some cream in, and you're trying to, you're making something not coffee, in my opinion, but it's Starbucks on crack and acid, basically. I mean, you're killing the taste. You just sip it, and you have one, and you go, that was really good, and you don't really at that point wondering if you're tasting the sugar, the milk, the coffee itself, but it was delicious. I have to give them.
Well, there's a whole bunch of research out now, real research, that says that coffee is actually good for you, you know.
Oh, I've got it all right here. Everything right here, right?
I'm buying.
Yeah, it's got more antioxidants than anything else than you could possibly put in your body. It can raise your HDL and lower your LDL. And they tell you if you have 4 to 5 cups a day, you're going to be healthy.
It wards off Alzheimer's and dementia.
Yeah, it keeps you, for me, I have poured a lot of coffee through my system, and here we are going here once again. When I get ready to do these shows, it's a full cup, hotted, and
for you, and I just love getting up in the morning and firing up my little stove in the tent, and the freezing as cold and pouring up with my coming partner saying, you're going to bring it, right? You're going to bring that concoction. And we pour it all, we toast each other, and we drink it, and off we go up that mountain,
So I want to show you something. This is what's called diner coffee.
Diner coffee. It even got the girl there. Yeah.
Yeah. Blue plate special. Okay. And that was a great idea. Our family in Sycamore sat at a local diner that has blue plate specials for life. My kids started working there many years ago, and in the age of 15, swabbing tables, and then as we grew older, we'd go in there and just have coffee. Well, as years went by, this coffee actually is produced by my daughter-in-law's company called Coroco in Sycamore, Illinois, and she is a fabulous coffee source. I always say sorceress, but she sources coffee all over the world.
Connoisseur, Randy, connoisseur.
Yeah, well, no, it is. Honestly, we do coffee cuppings. It's real serious business. They've got probably the finest coffee roaster in America in there. When we get the beans in, they have 2 coffee shops called Coroco, but they are not your normal drive-through coffee shop. These are beans that are sourced many different ways from all over the world. I do the same thing. I was so intrigued by it that myself and Joanne went up to Minnesota, went to coffee roasting school years ago. Best
You're
weekend,
roasting school, Randy?
the
Wow.
roasting school. And you learn all of what my kids had done. Everybody has to do the same thing. This is a science unto itself. And those little coffee beans are full of love, and they just, they're beans from all over the world. And of course, Hawaii is known for some of the best coffee beans in the world if you get them from
Yes.
from the right.
Most people don't know that, Randy. I'm glad that, something, you can tell the world about.
Well, it's very expensive. I mean, I bring them in, and I have a little 1/4 ounce coffee roaster that does the same thing at a 1/4 ounce at a time that my daughter-in-law can do 150 pounds at a time. And so what happens is when you're a coffee roaster, you get in coffee beans from all over the world. And I mean all over the world, from Ecuador to anywhere in South America. Some of my favorites are that I order and bring in raw are from Fiji, the Papua New Guinea, of course Hawaii when we can get them, and then Pura Vida down in Costa Rica. Some of the best coffee is grown down there, and strangely, Costa Rica, their coffee is so good they only allow 10% of the crop off the island. They
Wow.
keep they keep it for themselves. So when you
We-
get
Coffee's been going up in price. There was this big article in New York Times about how coffee is so popular now. The price is surging up of coffee all over the world.
yeah, except excuse me, I should have some now. Is that just some basic coffee facts? Um, Coffee, the raw green beans. When I order green beans, or my daughter-in-law does any coffee roaster, so we went to this importer in Minneapolis, and it was a 14-acre building, and literally 50 and 150-pound bags of beans from all over the world were stacked 150 feet tall in this warehouse. And I sent Joanne over to stand in front of it just so I could get a picture. And it looks like that last scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark where they're putting they're putting the Lost Ark back into the Smithsonian, and they're in this huge building. Well, this building looked like that, of beans from all over the world. And I said, so my God, how long do these beans stay here? And they go, 90 days. 14 acres, 150 feet tall. Well, beans have a lifetime. I mean, they're like little sponges. So they will soak up whatever bad atmosphere or good atmosphere you have. And when we went to roasting school, Joanne had the great capability. Beans can have vanillas and chocolates and orange and based on, like, if you went to the Big Island, Hawaii, they say, well, you can take that taste back home with you. It's all wrapped in those coffee beans. You just got to find a way to roast them correctly. And there's when a coffee roaster gets the beans, there is no directions how to roast them. You have to figure it out on your own. It's all trial and error. And
I have been all over the world, and I have never been to a country that didn't adore coffee. You can buy coffee in the wilds of Afghanistan, in Bolivia, in South, I mean, everywhere on earth, people adore coffee. You can buy yourself coffee anywhere because
yeah,
everybody drinks coffee. I don't know one country in the world that doesn't love coffee.
yeah. No, it's from Ethiopia where it began to what is called cowboy coffee. If you think about it, you watch these Westerns, and they're all sitting around at night, their head laying back on their saddle, and the horses are tied up, and the fire is going, and they got that little silver coffee pot going, and they got coffee going. And then you got to think through, well, wait a minute. Sort of like you on the top of the hill, you burn through roasting coffee. Is that coffee you're done. You gotta, back in the old days, if you're out riding a horse, what's the next town? Where are you gonna get the coffee? Where do you store it? So they literally call it cowboy coffee. I mean, it has, but cowboy coffee has branches and twigs and leaves, and when they get done with it, they wrap it back up. I mean, it's going to be used again. It's going to be, it's not going to be us, so, get up in the morning. Do you drink the coffee that's left in the pot, or do you make a new pot of coffee? We're so tainted. We got to have our new coffee going. So
Well,
it's
right. I have all these different types of artisan teas. They're not caffeinated. You can get all these different teas. You go into these stores and everything, and then you can brew up a pot of just these different very tasty teas. And if you're out in the mountains and it's dry and cold, I mean, it's really really nice to sit down by the fire and have yourself a hot mug of tea, and it replenishes the water, and it doesn't keep you up at night, and then you're ready to restock the furnace with that coffee in the morning. The real
well. You speak of tea, we do source teas out also, and it's really funny. I was making a pilot. Actually, in my acting days, I was in Hollywood doing a pilot, and the director and the team that was out there, relatively famous, said, "Well, we have to have our tea ceremony tomorrow." And I'm going like,
tea
"Well,
ceremony.
cherry tea ceremony to begin this project." And they said, "This tea is like nothing you've ever had. It's from Vietnam. It's $3,500 an ounce, and we have a ceremony that goes with it, and we want you to honor whatever it is, and so forth and so on." And I was like, "Yeah, right. Come on, it's black tea, got a little bag and so forth." No, they made me believe it, and we drank it. And that was years ago, it's probably 10 years ago. So fast forward about 3 years ago, I'm talking to a tea provider, and all kinds of teas, all kinds of prices, all kinds of teas from all over the world. We're looking to bring in. By the way, have you ever heard about tea in Hollywood that's really expensive? Oh, she goes, "Yeah, everybody asked about that. $3,500 an ounce. How much do you want?" I was like, "You serious?" "No, I don't want any. Thank you." But no, there is out there in Candyland, there is somewhere that somebody came up with this $3,500. How many $3,500 an ounce teas do you drink, Robert?
Well, I think that somebody's on the scam on that. I mean, it's easy to say, well, this is $3,500. And I mean, you know, um, there's a lot of fabulous teas out there that are just available. I mean, some are a little more expensive than others, but they're not $3,500.
Well, you know what? That's the problem when you go into like a big supermarket, unnamed, and you go to the coffee and they'll say, true, you know, Hawaiian coffee, or it's got coffee from Hawaii in it. Well, yeah, it does, maybe 5%. And then it'll
That's
have,
another gimmick. It contains coffee from Hawaii. You look on the you look on the ingredients, but there's a multitude of fabulous teas and fabulous coffees that you can buy and take with you and get out into the wilderness and have these wonderful experiences. And you and I, are coffee connoisseurs and tea connoisseurs. And, in the morning, there's just nothing like that big cup of coffee, sit by the campfire and get up, put your pack on and, head up the mountain, and I can even put them in thermoses, and take another hit on the way up, and you have to take your water in thermoses pretty much this time of year on because otherwise it'll freeze, in your backpack and unless you put it way down in there, so uh, that's what that's a nice thing. Be up there in the cold and the wind and pull out and have a cup of Joe up there at 12, 13,000 feet. And um, wonderful,
well,
wonderful experience.
I'll tell you, it is. Well, by the way, I was just reading this afternoon, Robert Redford passed away last night. Didn't know if you
Yes,
saw
he
that.
did. I love this guy. He
Yeah.
was, um, I love that. What was that great thing he did? The movie, him and what was his partner?
But
Bob.
Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid.
There you go.
Paul Newman was one of them. He had the great love story with he and Barbara Streisand. That was, a great thing. But Paul Newman, I think he did a few movies. Not only that, The Sting was one of, if I always had a certain number of movies I had to, my kids were forced to watch growing up that weren't first run, and The Sting they had to sit and watch, these classic old.
That was a fabulous, it had lots of these iconic things in it, like Ghostbusters and a bunch of others that have these iconic scenes in it that
Right.
it have implications later in life in all kinds of circumstances, and
What's been your all-time favorite movie?
woo, well, Butch Cassidy's way up on the list there for me, and it had a whole bunch of different themes to it, and made these guys, uh, likable characters, identifiable characters, even though they're quote bad guys, and you got to see this duality play there, and they had a lot of sense of humor. And that one thing where, they jump in the river, remember that? And he says, go ahead, Jeff. He said, "Look, what are you worried about? The fall is going to kill you." Remember that?
I can't swim. Don't worry about that. Paul will kill
Fall
you.
will kill you.
Well,
So I thought that was great. What else?
I'll tell you mine, and I'll give you, growing up, I always going to movies. I took the kids to movies every Friday night. I'll give you a minute to think about your favorite movies as you go along. But On Golden Pond, with Henry Fonda
I remember that
and
one.
his daughter, and it was basically he and Norman and Ethel Thayer opening up this old cottage up on this beautiful lake, and his grandson comes up to spend the summer, and it was the grandson learning from the grandfather. Well, of course, I could relate to that in tears. I mean, that was my life growing up, and
Yes,
uh,
yes.
it was another one of those where, classic line. Uh, it's just so many classic lines in that movie. But anyway, this cantankerous young grandson comes, and he's not wanting to be there, and so forth and so on. And Norman Henry Fonda looks down at him, gives him a book. Uh, one of the classic. God, I wish I could remember what it was. Is about kids traveling the ocean and so forth and so on. Anyway, gives the kid the book, and he says, "Now take this upstairs and give me a report in the morning." The kid looks at him and goes like, "Screw you, I'm out of here. I'm not going to do any of this." Until all of a sudden he realizes, this old guy has a point when he takes him out fishing, and it's
Movies and books were this great cultural format, to communicate ideas and, sensitize people to all kinds of issues and notions and experiences and open you to the world that, is being replaced largely by these ghastly people on their phones with these computer games that are just brutal, murderous, horrible things. And so I think that the whole gamer culture, it was horribly toxic, and it's too bad, that books and these great iconic movies, are sort of fading back into the experience of most young people, because that's what civilized people and socialize them to what matters, and then God forbid there's books, um,
excuse me again. There is a study. The test scores in America are down for kids in junior high and high school.
oh, it's just plunging. America is sinking like a rock in so
Yeah.
many ways, and the most disturbing to me is that the loss of the Thales came up with this notion 2,600 years ago that and the world was all cults and believe this, believe that, and he says no, the truth is found through reason and evidence, and
Mhm.
that became science that made the modern world, and it's horrifying to me that people are turning their back on that, and they're not understanding even the whole concept of science and evidence-based, and you see that now that one in every six families is rejecting vaccines.
Yeah.
And the whole story about it is just it's evidence. So I see this evidence-based. So it struggled to get a foothold. I mean, they threw Galileo in jail in 1621 for pointing his telescope up and saying, "Look, the Venus and Mercury are going through phases. That means that the Earth goes around the sun, not the other way around, as the church says." They threw him in jail. He said, "No, don't look in the telescope." And so we're going back to this pre-evidence world of an uneducated populace that doesn't understand this great tradition that we've been, and this great science that we have. And it's scary to me, and you can see it in what's going on right now, in the main
Well,
theme.
the study showed where the degradation began in schools was in 2010 and 11. What happened back then? The smartphone was invented.
What happened?
The smartphone was invented and being used by kids at that point in time.
Exactly. And now you go out into the world and walk down the street, and everybody is looking at
Yeah,
this. Everybody,
I know.
So I don't think that's a healthy thing, and it certainly isn't a healthy thing for kids. And you and I went out, and I used to go out and play along the riverbank and camp in the woods, and and take hikes and stuff under the stars and build campfires. And now these kids, play these ghastly computer games and sit in their house, and they don't exercise, and they don't read, and they don't travel, and they just sit there. And it's pretty scary as to where this is leading us as a society, and I don't know what to do about it.
Well, I think it's so many different things, and I guess hopefully in these conversations that you and I have will lead to those paths of hopefully triggering people to think and give them some facts just to think, no opinion with it. But the again, we grew up in Freeport. You drink out of a hose. Why do you drink out of a hose? Well, it's convenient, actually. I mean, it was right there. You didn't, had a lot of water in it, and it was fresh, and I could, wash the mud off my hands and put some in the last scrape of blood that I had coming. I mean, it was like, you know, you sit there, and then the things that bothered me. Actually went back to school about 10, 11 years ago because I needed some courses in media law. But I decided while I was there, I still had a scholarship in place. They said, well, you might as well take as many classes as you want. So I ended up taking 18, 21 hours of class and qualified for 3 degrees. And I didn't need the degrees. I had figured I was old enough that getting my Social Security was fine. But I did it for education. I had a wonderful time being amongst kids in the School of Communication at NIU. One of the classes took a rhetoric class, which sort of frightened me. I didn't know, like, okay, what am I going to learn, not learn? It was wonderful. Hard class. Started off with 60 kids, ended up with 11. They're all coming to the old guy. How are you getting these grades? Well, I love this class because I'm learning from Aristotle on, about language and where it came about. But back then, one of the lectures was, at the time, great instructor, is that teenagers were becoming depressed and nobody could figure out why, except girls, when they got on their phone, all those green lights would come on, who's online, and all the pictures of picture of me, picture of me, picture of me, picture of me. I don't think they do it as much anymore, but basically girls were just posting pictures at parties and whatever. And what in fact was happening was 90% of the girls are sitting at home on their bed thinking everybody else is out having a good time. Nobody's out socializing. They're on their phone, they're alone, and they came up with a determination at the time, Latin termination, they called it isolado. It was isolation causing this definite depression led by girls sitting alone thinking everybody's having a good time. And in fact, nobody's having a good time. Very few small percentages.
Very, very sad.
You know,
So many different, these toxic things going on. And I don't know how, we go back and say, wait a minute, the whole way we're doing everything is going to have to be rethought, and, the whole what it means to be a kid, and the kind of things you do and the things you're taught and what you do as a kid, and and how you what kind of media you consume and how you interact with your peers. You know, we're going to have to go back and sort of reconstruct that into some healthy, you know, algorithm that we have people do now, you know, in the future, as opposed to this extreme isolation, violence, and people, not, watching these horrid video games and it's a culture that's very toxic, and it can be changed. You know, we had a world before this. We can go back to a world after this, and I'm optimistic that it can be addressed. What we need, and which we're lacking right now, is the political will to do it. And but anyway, that may be the subject of future things. What can we do now to save the world? And I think you and I could come up with a lot of things that people could be doing.
I think, somehow baby boomers have become a hated group. They just tell us we're taking up space, or this obnoxious huge bubble that came along. We were privileged and this, that, and the other thing. And I get so fascinated by it. I'm like, we were privileged not to have a vaccine for polio, and then we got one, and we all damn well took it. There wasn't not only that, you had to dress up in Freeport, Illinois. You weren't there, but about the time we were 12, when the vaccine came along, we had to get these 3 sugar cubes, and they had it down at the Masonic Temple by Aldermatic area, and they had the nurses in there, and you dressed up Sunday go to meeting clothes to go down and get your 3 ice sugar cubes over 3 different opportunities.
I did that too in other high schools. You know, everybody in America, got in lines in those schools and took the sugar cubes, and this great achievement, this enormous achievement has resulted in, it used to be that 31% of all the deaths were children under a year old, and now it's almost none of them. A tiny proportion of 1% die every year, and so the difference was nothing but vaccines. And all those people would have these 5 or 6 or 8 kids, only 2 or 3 would make it to adulthood because of these childhood diseases, and we cured it, we conquered it. And
I mean, we have to go down a little bit down to logic, and reason. Is that, there was the statement made in Congress, and I think it was JF or Robert Kennedy Jr. saying that there was like 65 pokes, or one of the Republicans were saying people had to withstand 65 or 92 pokes by the time they were 21, meaning their vaccine shots. And I was like, well, that's a privilege,
yes, it's a privilege.
It's a privilege. I mean, you kept you healthy, and it kept you strong. And yes, people are living longer now. And, tonight I've had them all. I've signed up. I don't miss. I've had probably 7 or 8 COVID shots.
I got one yesterday, Randy.
Yeah.
It's hitting me today a little bit.
Well, I'm getting the COVID flu shot here, and when we're done here, I'm lined up to go get mine in 45 minutes from now, and
That's
willingly
great.
so. I mean,
I just did it, and it wasn't as bad as the previous one. So I think you're in for a better run this time. But one of the things that is amazing to me is that our President Garfield, he was the 20th president of the United States, and some crazy, apolitical guy shot him, not unlike, this other guy, this Kurt, gun that shot him. And um, and it was just when it was a little teeny revolver. The guy that shot him went to gun shops in Washington and said, if I buy that revolver and shot somebody famous, would I be famous? So you can see it was apolitical. So poor Garfield, they take him home. He's got this bullet. It didn't go in very far. It was just a little teeny revolver. And so his doctor, a guy named Dr. Willard Bliss, okay, he was a great believer in the terrain theory. He rejected Louis Pasteur in the germ theory. He would sneer, I never saw a germ. Did you ever say? I don't think they exist. So he kept sticking his unwashed fingers into Garfield's wound. Garfield got infected and died of sepsis but he really died of this gross ignorance and malpractice of this whole thing. It was all pushed by this guy named Antoine Béchamp, who pushed the terrain theory, which was the anti-germ theory. And then Robert Koch was the German guy who saw him with microscopes, and we have all these, and it went on to save all these millions and millions and millions of people. And so here was this president of the United States, ministered by somebody who was worshiping Antoine Béchamp. Guess who also likes him? Brainworm Robbie Kennedy, who wants to go back to the pre-1880, back to the mid-19th century rejection of the germ theory and sanitation and sterile environments, because they don't think germs, they want to go back there and reject vaccines and take us back to the time when everybody died before they got to be 2 years old.
I would give you, our time is running out. We've got about 6-7 minutes. When I was married, and this is a fact, the second time, and my second wife wanted to have children, but she didn't want our children to have the pertussis shot. And I was like, why? Well, this is back in the 80s, it was believed that the pertussis shot had some complications with it, like 1 in 100,000 died or something like that, and it was a risk too. I didn't know if it existed. And we had a tussle over that.
Wow.
And what happened was our general practitioner went out and found a study from Japan that showed that having the pertussis shot in Japan was voluntary. And those wanted to see what happened to those that volunteered not to get it. Well, they had 25% deaths. Wasn't 1 in 100,000, 25% died. Horrible deaths.
That's what you compare. Those that got it, I mean, what is the risk of not doing it versus the risk of doing it? Let's say 1 in 100,000 does die from the shot. It's 1,000 times that, 10,000 times that will die if you don't get it. So that's what the FDA in medicine declares as safe as a relative term is compared to not doing it. Okay.
Right.
Not doing it. If there's a vaccine or if there's a drug, if you have cancer and it's 100% chance it's going to kill you, and there's some vaccine that you can take or some medicine that has a 90% chance of killing you, but if you don't take it, it's 100% chance you're going to die. It's safe, right? Because you got at least a 10% shot. That's that same principle here. That why is that so hard people to understand?
Yeah, I never wanted to use a parachute until that last engine caught on fire. I'm good with this parachute now. It's okay. It's did you have measles growing up?
Yeah, I did. I had it really bad.
And so did I. Everybody had it real bad. When you got hard measles, I don't even know if people understand what hard measles are. There were 2 forms of measles, standard brand and then hard measles. Hard measles meant you go to a dark room for a week and wait for it to go away because you couldn't watch TV. You couldn't be subjected to light. You felt like awful. And then you say, well, that was good. How about mumps? You want to have mumps? Well, you're going to get them. And, miss another 10 days, you might go deaf. And how about polio? Well, you could be in that. I played in a playpen in Freeport with a young boy that got polio. I played with him every day. And somehow I didn't get it, And
wow.
you wonder how in the world. This morning, I was listening to the radio, and they were talking down in St. Louis that 20% of the kids down there don't have measles shots. There's no herd immunity now anymore. There's nothing. This person talking, they're going like, this is going to be a disaster. Disaster.
Well, I just New York Times said today that 1 in every 6 parents now, and it's going up really rapidly. 1 in every 6 rejects all vaccines. So 1/6 of all the kids no vaccines, and so people are going to die. It's sad.
Well, this has been a joyful show. I'll tell you. So I'll tell you what, we're going to come back next time. We're going to see what else we can explore, because I want to talk about what it's like to be mountain climbing. There are some issues in mountain climbing that we haven't discussed in the past. I want to talk about your trip to Europe, and hopefully we're going to have London Grace, our beautiful, beautiful actress, movie producer. She'll be joining us, hopefully along with Art Strickland and Bobby Aldrich, who is an eco-minded friend of ours up in northern Wisconsin, who's getting ready to go travel to big trip going to Eastern Europe Greece, Italy, a couple other countries I can't remember, leaving in the middle of October. But he's got some great stories to tell about working on a boat up on Lake Superior, and some history up there that truly remarkable. But we've got such a diverse team. I want everybody to get to know them, because we do celebrate all the good things in life. And we try to keep it simple. We try to keep it good and wholesome. And so for Robert, I appreciate everything today. It's been a fast hour. I mean, crazy how
Yeah,
fast
very
that
fast.
went. And I want to thank you for that. And we'll line up again. We talked a little bit about coffee. I don't know what the hell. I guess I have to look at my notes. I have to watch this show. But anyways, my grandfather said as we sign off, always remember, leave a better footprint, because that's what my grandfather said to do, and there must be some reasoning behind it. Anyway,
Okay.
Robert Mills, this is Old Uncle Randy. This is Golfers, Golf, and Travel. And we're brought to you by Distillery Channel Media, LLC, and Live Eagle Style. So long, folks.
So long.
Bye-bye.